February 1968. Khe Sanh Combat Base. A green bowl of mud and smoke pressed between two ridgelines of jungle. For 77 days it was the most shelled piece of ground on Earth. When the mortars fell, men dove for the same craters again, praying the next one wouldn't land closer. Among them was Corporal Daniel Harris, 21, 3rd Marines. On the morning of February 23rd, a patrol went missing beyond Hill 861, swallowed by mist and enemy fire. Radios went dead. No reinforcements could reach them. The valley was a killing zone. Command marked the unit presumed lost. Harris refused to accept it. He had trained with those men, shared rations and letters from home. So that night, while the base shook under artillery, he slipped beyond the wire alone with a carbine, morphine syringes, and a stretcher folded on his back. The officers who saw him go, it looked like suicide. The jungle had already taken companies whole. But Harris walked into it anyway, moving with the slow, deliberate steps of a man who had stopped believing in chance. Every few yards he froze as flares lit the trees white, then slid forward when darkness returned. Hours passed. Then a voice, hoarse American, called for water. He found them half buried in the mud. 5 men still breathing, 2 dead, and the radio man bleeding out. He tied tourniquets with his own shirt sleeves, used his bayonet to cut bamboo poles, and lashed together a makeshift sled. Outside the tree line, machine gun tracers stitched the night. Inside, the sound of breathing was the only thing that mattered. He was no longer a soldier on mission. He was a one-man rescue column, and the jungle was his enemy. But he kept dragging, because some men fight for orders, and some fight for the faces they cannot leave behind. By dawn, mist turned to rain. Each drop hit like static on Harris's helmet as he dragged the first man toward the ridge. The bamboo sleds snagged on vines, so he hacked them loose with his K-bar, breathing in short bursts between artillery echoes from the base 2 miles away. He marked his path with torn ration wrappers so he could find his way back, if he made it. At every pause he pressed his ear to the mud. When he heard boots or foreign voices, he stopped breathing altogether. Once, a patrol passed close enough for him to see the red stars painted on their helmets. He waited until the last whisper faded, then moved again. One by one he ferried the wounded out. 2 crawls forward, 1 backward all night long. He carried a man on his shoulders when the sled broke, stumbled through elephant grass that sliced his arms open, and kept moving. He whispered names to keep them conscious. Evans, Rodriguez, Cole. They answered faintly, clinging to life through the rhythm of those words. The perimeter. Friendly flares turned the valley into a white inferno. Marines opened fire at movement, unaware who it was. Harris waved a blood-stained bandage on his rifle, shouting until someone recognized the voice. Medics rushed in, stunned to see him emerge, mud-covered, trembling, dragging what was left of his squad. He collapsed before he could salute. Hours later, while surgeons worked under red bulbs, a lieutenant counted the bodies and whispered, "He brought back everyone." The phrase spread through the base faster than any order. In a siege defined by waiting for death, one man had gone out and wrestled life back from the jungle itself. Khe Sanh did not sleep. The base roared day and night under the 152mm drums of the People's Army. Every hour, dust rose from the red earth like breath from a dying body. Inside the bunkers, Marines counted seconds between impacts. Harris lay on a cot, bandaged, refusing morphine. His rescued men were alive, but the siege was tightening, enemy trenches crawling closer by the day. Outside, the hills burned under napalm strikes that looked like miniature suns. Radio chatter carried fragments. Ammo low, medevac grounded. Hold the line. He was ordered to rest. Instead, he worked with engineers, reinforcing foxholes, hauling sandbags for the men he had carried out. When the supply parachutes missed the strip and drifted into no man's land, Harris volunteered again. The same jungle that had tried to kill him now waited beyond the wire, dense with tripwires and snipers. He went anyway, crawling through elephant grass to retrieve crates of plasma and sea rations. He came back with shrapnel in his leg and 2 boxes of morphine. Someone painted his name on the side of the bunker door, the Mule of 861 for the next month. Khe Sanh became less a battle than a test of endurance. Men rationed water by spoonfuls, slept beside corpses until helicopters could land. Artillerymen fired so long their hands blistered through gloves. When reporters asked later what kept them alive, survivors mentioned luck, air power, and faith. But inside the base, everyone knew a quieter truth, that courage is contagious. Every time Harris limped past with a crate or carried another wounded man to triage, someone else found a reason to keep going. The siege would break eventually, but by then it had already revealed what no statistic could measure. That survival, in Khe Sanh, was an act of will shared between men. When the siege finally lifted in April, Khe Sanh was a ghost town of shell craters and twisted metal. The base had held, but at a cost no report could capture. Harris stood at the airstrip watching the C-130s come and go, engines drowning the silence that followed 77 days of bombardment. He had lost 20 pounds, half his hearing, and any sense of what day it was. Reporters asked him what drove him to walk into that jungle alone. He just said, "They were still out there." In the weeks that followed, the surviving members of his squad were evacuated, some to hospitals in Da Nang, others back home. Harris refused rotation. He stayed until every name from Hill 861 was accounted for. When a general tried to pin a medal on him, he asked that it be sent instead to the families of the men who hadn't come back. The press turned his story into legend, a lone Marine carrying his squad through hell. But those who were there remembered something quieter: how he never raised his voice, never talked about heroism, and always carried the same folded map stained with rain and blood. By the time Khe Sanh was abandoned later that year, the jungle had already started to reclaim it. Harris left with the last convoy, one hand resting on the empty stretcher tied to the truck bed. History would count the tonnage of bombs dropped, the shells fired, the days endured, but not the weight a single man carried on his shoulders. His story became less about medals or statistics and more about the kind of endurance that wars are too loud to notice. The moment one Marine decided that no jungle, no artillery, and no order could stop him from bringing his brothers home.